But here were worlds lifted halfway to heaven. The veil was there, but not the shadowy wall. In forms not too remote from human grasp, some passion of the inviolate purity broke through, a ray of the original bliss. Heaven's joys might have been earth's if earth were pure. There could have reached our divinized sense and heart some natural felicity's bright extreme, some thrill of supernature's absolutes. All strengths could laugh and sport on earth's hard roads and never feel her cruel edge of pain. All love could play and nowhere nature's shame. But she has stabled her dreams in matter's courts, and still her doors are barred to things supreme. These worlds could feel God's breath visiting their tops. Some glimmer of the transcendent's hem was there. Across the white aeonic silences, immortal figures of embodied joy traversed wide spaces near to eternity's sleep. Pure mystic voices in beatitude's hush appeal to love's immaculate sweetnesses, calling his honeyed touch to thrill the worlds, his blissful hands to seize on nature's limbs, his sweet intolerant might of union to take all beings into his Saviour arms, drawing to his pity the rebel and the wife, to force on them the happiness they refuse. A chant hymeneal to the unseen divine, a flaming rhapsody of white desire, lured an immortal music into the heart and woke the slumbering ear of ecstasy. A purer, fierier sense had there its home, a burning urge no earthly limbs can hold. One drew a large, unburdened, spacious breath, and the heart sped from beat to rapturous beat. The voice of time sang of the immortal's joy, an inspiration and a lyric cry. The moments came with ecstasy on their wings. Beauty unimaginable moved heaven bare, absolved from boundaries in the vasts of dream. The cry of the birds of wonder called from the skies to the deathless people of the shores of light. Creation leaped straight from the hands of God. Marvel and rapture wandered in the ways. Only to be was a supreme delight. Life was a happy laughter of the soul, and joy was king with love for minister. The Spirit's luminousness was bodied there. Life's contraries were lovers or natural friends, and her extremes keen edges of harmony. Indulgence with a tender purity came and nursed the God on her maternal breast. There none was weak, so falsehood could not live. Ignorance was a thin shade protecting light, imagination the free will of truth, pleasure a candidate for heaven's fire. The intellect was beauty's worshipper. Strength was the slave of calm spiritual law. Power laid its head upon the breasts of bliss. There were summit glories inconceivable, autonomies of wisdom's still self-rule, and high dependencies of her virgin Son, illumined theocracies of the seeing soul, throned in the power of the Transcendent's ray. A vision of grandeurs, a dream of magnitudes, in sun-bright kingdoms moved with regal gait. Assemblies, crowded senates of the gods, life's puissances reigned on seats of marble will, high dominations and autocracies, and laurel strengths and armed imperative mights. All objects there were great and beautiful. All beings wore a royal stamp of power. There sat the oligarchies of natural law. Proud, violent heads served one calm monarch brow. All the soul's postures donned divinity. There met the ardent mutual intimacies of mastery's joy and the joy of servitude, imposed by love on love's heart that obeys, and love's body held beneath a rapturous yoke. All was a game of meeting kinglinesses. For worship lifts the worshipper's bowed strength. Close to the God's pride and bliss his soul adores. The ruler there is one with all he rules. To him who serves with a free, equal heart, obedience is his princely training school, his nobility's coronet and privilege. His faith is a high nature's idiom, his service a spiritual sovereignty. There were realms where knowledge joined creative power in her high home and made her all his own. The grand illuminate seized her gleaming limbs and filled them with the passion of his ray, till all her body was his transparent house, and all her soul a counterpart of his soul. Apotheosized, transfigured by wisdom's touch, her days became a luminous sacrifice, an immortal moth in happy and endless fire. She burned in a sweet, intolerable blaze. A captive life wedded her conqueror. In his wide sky she built her world anew. She gave to mind's calm pace the motor speed, to thinking a need to live what the soul saw, to living an impetus to know and see. His splendor grasped her puissance to him clung. She crowned the idea a king in purple robes, put her magic serpent scepter in thought's grip, made forms his inward vision's rhythmic shapes, and her acts the living body of his will. A flaming thunder, a creator flash, his victor light rode on her deathless force. A centaur's mighty gallop bore the god. Life throned with mind, a double majesty. Worlds were there of a happiness great and grave, and action tinged with dream, laughter with thought, and passion there could wait for its desire until it heard the near approach of God. Worlds were there of a childlike mirth and joy, a carefree youthfulness of mind and heart, found in the body a heavenly instrument. It lit an aureate halo round desire and freed the deified animal in the limbs to divine gambols of love and beauty and bliss. On a radiant soil that gazed at heaven's smile, a swift life impulse tinted not nor stopped. It knew not how to tire, happy were its tears. Their work was play, and play the only work. The tasks of heaven, a game of godlike might, a celestial bacchanal forever pure, unstayed by faintness as in mortal frames, life was an eternity of rapturous moods. Age never came, care never lined the face, imposing on the safety of the stars a race and laughter of immortal strengths. The nude godchildren in their playfields ran, smiting the winds with splendor and with speed. Of storm and sun they made companions, sported with the white mane of tossing seas, slew distance trampled to death under their wheels, and wrestled in the arenas of their force. Imperious in their radiance like the suns, they kindled heaven with the glory of their limbs, flung like a divine largesse to the world. A spell to force the heart to stark delight, they carried the pride and mastery of their charm, as if life's banner on the roads of space. Ideas were luminous comrades of the soul. Mind played with speech, cast javelins of thought, but needed not these instruments toil to know. Knowledge was nature's pastime like the rest, investitured with the fresh heart's bright ray, an early God instinct's child inheritors, tenants of the perpetuity of time, still thrilling with the first creation's bliss. They steeped existence in their youth of soul. An exquisite and vehement tyranny, the strong compulsion of their will to joy, poured smiling streams of happiness through the world. There reigned a breath of high immune content, a fortunate gait of days in tranquil air, a flood of universal love and peace. A sovereignty of tireless sweetness lived like a song of pleasure on the lips of time. A large spontaneous order freed the will, a sun-frank winging of the soul to bliss, the breadth and greatness of the unfettered act, and the swift fire heart's golden liberty. There was no falsehood of soul severance. There came no crookedness of thought or word to rob creation of its native truth. All was sincerity and natural force. There freedom was sole rule and highest law. In a happy series climbed or plunged these worlds, in realms of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of titan power, life played at ease with her immense desires. 1,000 Edens she could build, not pause. No bound was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. Awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls, arisen from the breast of some deep infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope, in her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will. No guide she needed but her luminous heart. No fall debased the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy. abandoned to her rapid fancy's moods and the rich colored riot of her mind, initiate of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the rhythms of God. At will she wove her wizard wonder dance, a Dionysian goddess of delight, a bacchant of creative ecstasy. This world of bliss he saw and felt its call, but found no way to enter into its joy. Across the conscious gulf there was no bridge. A darker air encircled still his soul, tied to an image of unquiet life. In spite of yearning mind and longing sense, to a sad thought by grey experience formed, and a vision dimmed by care and sorrow and sleep, all this seemed only a bright, desirable dream, conceived in a longing distance by the heart of one who walks in the shadow of earth pain. Although he once had felt the Eternal's clasp, too near to suffering worlds his nature lived, and where he stood were entrances of night. Hardly too close, beset by the world's care, can the dense mould in which we have been made return sheer joy to joy, pure light to light. For its tormented will to think and live, first to a mingled pain and pleasure woke, and still it keeps the habit of its birth. A dire duality is our way to be. In the crude beginnings of this mortal world, life was not, nor mind's play, nor heart's desire. When earth was built in the unconscious void, and nothing was save a material scene, identified with sea and sky and stone, her young gods yearned for the release of souls asleep in objects vague, inanimate. In that desolate grandeur, in that beauty bare, in the deaf stillness, mid the unheeded sounds, heavy was the uncommunicated load of Godhead in a world that had no needs, for none was there to feel or to receive. This solid mass, which brooked no throb of sense, could not contain their vast creative urge. Immersed no more in matter's harmony, the spirit lost its statuesque repose. In the uncaring trance it groped for sight, passion for the movements of a conscious heart, famishing for speech and thought and joy and love, in the dumb, insensitive wheeling day and night, hungered for the beat of yearning and response. The poised inconscience shaken with a touch, the intuitive silence trembling with a name, they cried to life to invade the senseless mold, and in brute forms awake divinity. A voice was heard on the mute rolling globe, a murmur moaned in the unlistening void. A being seemed to breathe where once was none, something pent up in dead insentient depths, denied conscious existence, lost to joy, turned as if one asleep since dateless time. Aware of its own buried reality, remembering its forgotten self and right, it yearned to know, to aspire, to enjoy, to live. Life heard the call and left her native light. Overflowing from her bright, magnificent plain, on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space. Here too the gracious great-winged angel poured her splendor and her sweetness and her bliss, hoping to fill a fair new world with joy. As comes a goddess to a mortal's breast, and fills his days with her celestial clasp, she stooped to make her home in transient shapes. In matter's womb she cast the immortal's fire. In the unfeeling vast woke thought and hope. Smote with her charm and beauty flesh and nerve, and forced delight on earth's insensible frame. Alive and clad with trees and herbs and flowers, earth's great brown body smiled towards the skies. Azure replied to azure in the sea's laugh. New sentient creatures filled the unseen depths. Life's glory and sweetness ran in the beauty of beasts. Man dared and thought and met with his soul the world. But while the magic breath was on its way, before her gifts could reach our prisoned hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. The secret will that ropes itself with night and offers to spirit the ordeal of this flesh, imposed a mystic mask of death and pain. Interned now in the slow and suffering years, sojourns the winged and the wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert inconscious law. Insensible foundation of a world in which blind limits are on beauty laid, and sorrow and joy as struggling comrades live. A dim and dreadful muteness fell on her. Abolished was her subtle, mighty spirit, and slain her boon of child god happiness, and all her glory into littleness turned, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire. To feed death with her works is here life's doom. So veiled was her immortality that she seemed, inflicting consciousness or unconscious things, an episode in an eternal death, a myth of being that must forever cease. Such was the evil mystery of her change. End of Canto 3.